Welcome back to the Better Than Rich show. You are in for another treat today with not Nick Santonastasso, with Stacey Santonastasso, Nick's mom. That's right. You are going to get a peek behind the curtain of the person who is responsible for delivering this unbelievable human to the world. Stacey lives in New Jersey with her husband, Michael. They have 4 grown children and 8 grandchildren. She's the author of this #1 best-selling book, Born to Break the Boundaries. She is an ordinary parent who has raised extraordinary children. She's an ordinary parent who raised extraordinary children. And you're in for a treat with this conversation. We go deep. We ask a lot of the questions that many people have thought, but maybe don't have the courage to ask her or Nick. Get ready for an unbelievable combo. And if you haven't listened to if you haven't listened to Nick Santonastasso's episode, highly recommend you go back and check that one out. But get ready for Stacey Santonastasso. Get ready for this next episode on the Better Than Rich show. Welcome back to the Better Than Rich show. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Biggs. My name is Mike Abramowitz, and we have an incredible human on the show today. And I've been looking forward to this conversation since I first met her son, and many of you met her son, Nick Santonastasso, on our first episode of season 3. And I've been wanting to have this conversation with Stacey ever since I first saw Nick, probably a half a decade ago, speak. And I said, this human is awesome, but this kid had to be raised by someone, and I want to know who raised him. So we have Stacey, Nick's mom, on the episode. We don't have husband Michael, but I'll tell you, Stacey has an incredible book, and she wrote this beautiful story. I love the book, and we had to have her on the show. So Stacey, welcome to the Better Than Rich show.
Thank you for having me.
So I know you're up in New Jersey. You have 4 grown children. You got Marissa, Mike, Megan, and of course your youngest is Nick. You have 8 grandchildren. You have this great book, Born to Break the Boundaries, an ordinary parent who's raised extraordinary children. I want to know, okay, this again, hopefully I have so many questions, but
okay.
You have 3 kids. You're already an expert, Mom. You've raised these 3 kids, and then I'm going right in for it, Stacey.
Okay.
You go to that 19-week ultrasound in the book. I want to go right to it. You go to the 19-week ultrasound where the doctor's in the room with you and says, "There's no legs
Right.
on the screen here." Can you just I want to go right for it because I've been so curious on this moment, on the amount of courage, the strength, just the curiosity, anything that's going through your mind in that moment when you had already raised 3 kids, you already had 3 kids, you're like, oh, it's just a regular, ordinary ultrasound, just going in. And it kind of is a little different than what you expected because oftentimes in life, our experiences don't meet our expectations sometimes. So can you just kind of take us back to that moment and just like that experience?
Certainly. There was 2 ultrasounds. The one you might be speaking of is where the technician moving the wand, just kept referring to the heart and the face. And my husband's like, "You don't see the legs, do you?" And he said no. That right there just almost stopped my heart. We just looked at each other. We were like in absolute shock, devastated, absolutely devastated. And then the other ultrasound that we went for that was high in density, where I was in a room full of doctors and students because it was a teaching hospital, and the big screen was before us, and we were in there for a really long time. They were talking medical terms that made no sense to us, and quietly sobbing. I'm quietly sobbing because it doesn't sound good. Finally, they bring us into a room and they tell us just all these horrible things. They're just horrible. Um, he would have a cleft palate. His organs wouldn't work. He had no genitalia. In my mind, I'm going like how could he still even be alive? And then they had referred to him as an it. So they kept saying it doesn't have, it could atrophy in the womb. It was unfathomable. Like I even tried to like picture like what a baby would look like from their description, and I just couldn't. It was absolutely heartbreaking. We literally ran out of there. My husband and I, we just ran out of there. Like, the information was so much to take in, and I didn't want to be in this room with all these people looking at me. It was beyond uncomfortable. That they gave us no hope, whatsoever. There was no compassion in the way they delivered the news, which I was later on really quite surprised. It was very clinical. So we left there utterly devastated, and then you couldn't wrap your mind around what you were told.
Mm.
Yeah, and for for the uninitiated, fill us in on Nick's diagnosis. What was it officially? And then
Hand-heart syndrome, I think it's called, right?
Right.
Oromandibular hypogenesis syndrome.
Okay.
So, in short, hand-heart type 2.
Along the lines of, okay, so you're there, right? You get this diagnosis, and then you and your husband, your family have to decide how you're going to move forward. How are you going to chart this course? And I kind of hinted at that
modern society.
In modern society, there's even discussions with some people where they say, you know what, I don't know if I'm up for it. I don't know if this child's up for it, and they end up, deciding.
Okay, so
so basically,
be transparent. You're talking
of course,
about terminating the pregnancy.
Yeah, so finding the courage, right, and then also giving him a chance to survive, and I was just teeing that up a little bit.
Okay, not a problem. So just this all occurred 6 weeks before Nick was born. Okay, so if there was no window of opportunity, if that was the direction we were thinking of going, because he was 6 weeks later, he was born. That's pretty basically I believe a full term pregnancy. So I'm carrying Nick. Now, mind you, he didn't kick or move like my other children did. Okay, there was a noticeable difference. It hurt less. But no, that was not a direction that we would go in.
Of course.
I'm a Christian. Not that I don't believe that that's okay for certain situations. I'm not pro anything. I'm just pro Stacey. Okay.
Yeah.
So it basically it was about me and not what the world would think of me.
Yeah.
But he was moving. Okay. And I was totally 100% in love with this baby already. Okay. And he was ours. He was mine. And no, that wasn't an option. Okay,
what were some of the
thought, but not an option?
Some of the conversations, like who did you consult with during this process? Was it very much internal with you and Michael, or were there other people in your corner that you had just being a support system for you? Because maybe if you had whispering in your ear, like, did you just avoid some of those people? Like, how did you, like, those
Okay.
6 weeks were probably a long 6 weeks, possibly, I'd assume, but like, how did,
Sure. It was long in waiting, because everything was unknown, and then it wasn't long because, like, oh my God, in this time our life is going to change drastically. Now we told Michael's parents, my parents, and just my husband has 5 sisters and a brother. We just told a couple and 1 or 2 of our friends, and nobody else, not even our children. It's funny. I almost ended up being the support system for those around me versus them supporting me. People do not. What do you say in a situation like that? What do you even to say? No one's going to tell me it's going to be okay because we have proof that it isn't. I think our family was just as devastated as we were, but I just refused to stay in that state of mind. Like, it was horrible and it was bad, and I cried and I was hysterical. But through 6 weeks, I prayed constantly. I always in a state of prayer, okay, please God, please. Like, I think if I said please to him one more time, he would have been like, stop. So constantly praying. Like, what more could you possibly do? I had to absolutely rely on my faith, because I really think if I didn't, I would have lost my mind.
Mm. And I am curious, what if you could go back in time? These people that you mentioned, you had to be the support system for them. What would you have wanted if you had a guess? Like, thinking back to it, what would have provided you a little bit more of that support or that encouragement? Because you had to almost like reverse and be like, no, we're fine, and then isolated in silence by yourself. Like,
Yeah.
what might have support looked like for you?
I think I would have liked to heard. I believe that you believe it's going to be okay. I just don't. That would have, like, Michael and I were just very there for each other. We're each other's support system. I had him as well, but I think if we were more open about what was going on, I might have gotten another support system in areas that I didn't know, but we didn't really feel like we wanted to go really public before we knew it was happening. But I think that if you were going to offer someone support and you absolutely don't know the outcome or you don't know what to say, I think the kindest thing would be, I believe that you believe that things will turn out, well, or whatever the situation may be.
Yeah.
That's what I would say to people. I believe that you believe.
Yeah. There's like a certain surrender, right? That, it seems like has to happen in a situation like this, right? Where it's like, okay, I don't have control, right?
Right.
I have to release the control, and I have to just trust and hope and pray and all of the above. But I'm not in control. And, I think it makes sense, right? Why, when we're in situations, though, that we don't want 1,000 different opinions, we probably want 1, 2, 3 good ones, right? And so
Yes.
that kind of speaks to something we talk about on the show, which is like, good advice versus wisdom, right? Or seeking counsel rather than advice. And I think that you did that, and I think that that's a really smart thing. It's really it's interesting, some of the parallels. And Mike, I'm not sure how much you want to dive into this, but you obviously have had some. James came really early for you guys. And while the parallels aren't a Venn diagram of a circle, there's certainly some overlaps there. I'm curious, do you have any questions around like how raising a child like Nick parallels to your life?
Well, there's no way that Lindsay, my wife, and I can relate to anything that you experienced with Nick. The experiences that we can relate to are those lonely moments when it was just us, and there was so much uncertainty because of what we could call misdiagnosis. Like our son was at that ultrasound was diagnosed with endochondroplasia, with dwarfism, along with potentially osteogenesis, and there was high, like according to them, it was like something like 13% or something like that likelihood that James was going to make it um, alive at all, because we had a stillbirth a year before. So it was like there was so much uncertainty for my wife and I around it. And that's why when I was reading your story, I was laughing and crying by myself, sitting there reading your book. I'm like, because it took me back to some of those lonely moments of like, how can I be a rock for my wife, and obviously, Michael being a rock for you. And I know there was a point where Michael kind of had a little bit of a setback, in your book, and it's just like a lot of that pressure that we, as men, putting on ourselves. And that's why I'm like so interested to hear from your lens of this
Okay.
as the mom, of like just those moments when you're alone and you have to continue to muster up that courage to press forward regardless of, shit, my rock isn't as strong as I need that rock to be, or these people around me aren't saying the stuff that I really want them to say. um, I mean, it's really beautiful. It's remarkable, the amount of faith and courage that you have had, that you demonstrated during that time frame. Because obviously, he's inspiring the masses right now. I mean, the absolute masses, and he wouldn't be doing that if you didn't demonstrate the courage that you had. So I think there's some people and our listeners that are listening right now that maybe they're not going to be encountering it for themselves, but maybe their loved one is going to go through a time of circumstance where there's a lot of unpredictability or opinion, or statistical evidence that's not in their favor. And I guess the curiosity is just like, if is there anything else around that before we get into like the next part of the next chapter, which is like raising Nick, after he's born. But is there anything else under that chapter of like the chapter of uncertainty before Nick comes into the world, and you give birth? Anything else around that you feel could be relevant to anybody that's listening right now?
Um, Absolutely. It's actually something that Nick repeats often. What you focus on is what you get. I dug really deep, like really deep, and I had no doubt that he would be born, that he would survive birth, because we were told there was a possibility one. I think it was such a deep knowing in, that kept telling me, no, he'll survive. It might not, he might not be the way that you hope, but he could be more than you ever thought. I just really, you have to dig down deep, and it is such an individualized thing for each person. And I just think that, you'll hear the outside noise, but that's okay. People can have opinion, but as long as you're focused and you stay faithful to what you really believe, your convictions, not only does it help you, but people around you will see and learn, because everything's about a learning, right?
I have one question on that. So what do
Okay.
you feel in your life led you to that level of conviction and faith? Like if you go back to Stacey growing up, or earlier in life, because my mom died when I was 20, and I think by me going through that prepared me for the uncertainties and the circumstances at 35, 36, when we were going through this chapter. So I'm just curious, were there some things that happened that in the moment of like Stacey before Nick, earlier in life that kind of
Yeah.
prepared you for this, that at the moment you didn't realize like this was going to be a gift for me? Like this actually is not here. This, I didn't know this was going to help me later in life with some things. Can you speak to that at all? If there was any truth there?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so growing up, this is interesting. My mom was Jewish, and my dad is Portuguese, so he's Catholic. I was raised in a very mixed household, and it wasn't until very late in my life that I found Christianity. So I'm a baby new Christian in this life. And in my book, I do say that I hosted like Bible study at my home. And I remember this particular day, just feeling really like empowered, like I got this. And I prayed for something, not knowing that I was going to get Nick. And I prayed, I was like, you know what, God? I pray that I can wear my faith on my sleeve for all the world to see. I want you to use me. Wow. I unknowingly, I prayed for Nick and I got him. So I think before like the situation, I just knew that I wanted something to happen in my life and for my life, because that was my goal. Like I want them to be able to like see faith, like really see it. And yeah.
And you had to have your faith on display every single day, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's really beautiful. I'm curious about, Nick is such an incredible person, and there's so many incredible stories, right, about him growing up. And I mean, how did you, was this just how Nick was? Did you help him develop this incredible mindset and this incredible capacity? And how did you kind of help him? You said in the notes here that you're an ordinary parent who raised an extraordinary kid, but it's I think in some ways you maybe not doing yourself enough credit, giving yourself enough credit. What did you do to help him become the extraordinary person, not just to be successful, but to really be such an amazing person as well?
Okay. Early on, I absolutely made sure. Well, the whole goal was raise him just like the other kids, but I just wouldn't allow myself to get frustrated if he couldn't do something. Just a lot of encouragement and trial and error. Let him kind of figure it out on his own. I know people think we're mean because he tells people, yeah, my parents put my clothes in front of me and said, get dressed. Well, we did.
Yep.
But maybe not as crass as he said. It was like, here, try to put your shirt on. It was very loving. We did it very lovingly. But I think just kind of encouraging him to explore and try things Nick's way. Probably what was one of the best things we could have done for him. Okay, you do it, but you do it Nick's way.
He tells the story. I remember the first time I saw him speak about the Cheerios on the high chair and a spoon. And it's like, he has one finger and how are you going to use a spoon, or how are you going to eat these Cheerios? Like, how is he going to pick it up? And when he told the audience that story, it was an intimate crowd. I immediately thought to myself, like how I pictured in my mind was you and Michael, like leaving the room and like peeking around a corner and like watching how he was going to do it, and like maybe even like crying a little bit. It's like, oh my God, I hope this kid can figure this shit out. Like, or like that's the way like my mind like made up this whole sitcom scene in my mind, like watching this play out. So if you could give me, I could let my imagination stay where it is, but I would really love the context of like, how did situations like that unfold, where you give them some Cheerios and a spoon and a high chair and say, all right, you're going to learn how to, feed yourself right now. And you have one finger. Like, like I'm just so interested in how you parent that behavior.
Okay. There was a little more that happened before
Please.
that.
All right.
He just likes to go for that shock factor.
That's good. It got me.
We're used to it. We went to PT and OT with him when he was a little boy, and at one point they were trying to teach these little people fine motor skills, and they would use finger foods to do that. I would always have to feed it to Nick, and I asked them if they could come up with something that would like give him like a thumb, like for the pincer reflex, right? Or if that's what it's called. And they were like, oh no, you have to wait till he's older. And I remember driving home going, oh no, that's not a good answer. And I actually wrote about it. I ripped apart a junk drawer and I found one of the kids' kazoos. And it happened to be like the right length and width that I could strap on Nick's little hand. And then and I taught him that, how to slide and pick things up. And from there, we were able to create a spoon that could Velcro around where he could eat. But we did have Cheerios, and he figured out that if he didn't use the Cheerios, lift his finger and stuck it on the Cheerio, it was a lot easier than trying to chase Cheerios across the high chair. So I think maybe a little
I
bit.
love that. I love that, by the way. I love that. I think you like just the innovation of the kazoo. I was hoping you would go down that path. I remember that from the book, and just the licking of the finger and him almost like forcing the creativity, because you have to understand, Stacey, most parents, I wouldn't say most, I won't speak on behalf of all of them. A lot of parents these days coddle their kids so much, and it's like there's so much coddling that takes place that it doesn't allow for creativity or quote unquote failure to exist, where you really positioned Nick to allow some of that you raise him in an environment where some of that creativity could exist. And I think that's what is most admirable for me as a parent. And I can't speak on behalf of Andrew, but both of us raising kids, it's like to create and raise a kid in that environment. So I just want to speak to that. Sorry to cut you off on that, but
well, I was going to double click on that because I think that, so often, exactly, I see fully enabled, normal-bodied individuals going about their lives, and they're raising these kids, and the parents are doing so much for them, right? They're doing everything for their kids. We're walking to the baseball field the other day, and parents are carrying their baseball bag, and the kids running around. I'm like, no, like give the bag to the kid. Like the kid's got to do the, some work here, right? And it's like there's kind of a philosophy that we try to practice. I don't know that we're 100% great at it, but it seems like you have, you did it, whether consciously or not, but it's like, if they are capable of doing it, right, then they should do it themselves. And,
Absolutely.
you are pushing him for this independence when you could have pushed him basically to be codependent with you. There's an alternate reality where had you coddled him, he's still living at home and playing the victim instead of being the victor that he is. And so, that's just an incredible, way that you've pushed him to force him into situations to have to grow. And I just think that's incredible.
Thank you. So when we decided to have children, when we decided to have a family, the goal was to raise them, with morals and manners and to become productive citizens of society. Okay. So we just gave them tools and willed them to grow. We watered them. You raise them up to grow, to be independent, and to go out and, be creative souls, serve the world that you're in.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. Sorry, finish that thought. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
The only way you learn to do something is you do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what was it like for your other kids? Like, having Nick as a brother.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved in the book just like how you described them all together and like just please, this is a great question, Andrew. It's really great. I want to hear this.
Mercy. They gave him no mercy.
That's great.
They didn't, even from the first time they saw him, they just saw their little brother. They didn't see the physical difference. Like even when we pointed out, and they're like, okay, my other son offered to, oh, Mom, I'll give him my legs. Don't worry. Very accepting, very loving. And they didn't have like a preconceived notion like, oh my God, this child is different and we have to treat him different. They didn't have that. That's basically another reason why we didn't even let them in on that there was issues with the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I lost track of thought. So nope, they just treated Nick like one of the gang. You know, they beat up on him and they wouldn't let him win. He had to fight for everything that he got or he did. Okay. It wasn't easy. But you know, when you do something long enough, you become very good at it. So maybe where he struggled and overcame, and then more struggles, failures you overcome, it just became second nature to him. It just created the person that he is.
I asked him this question. I'd like to ask you, and he talked about in his book. Just there was a time where he was getting bullied. I think it was around kickball, and it's like you let a cripple beat you or something that.
Right.
And then, I asked him, I said, just he put in quotes in his book like handicap or disabled or stuff, around that. And he said, the only disability someone has is in their mind. He said, I just have different abilities. And I'm curious on, your frame around that, the idea of like disability or handicap versus different abilities. Like, so just how do you navigate? Because what's politically correct? Like or who cares about politically correct? Like what in your mind, like what do we say able-bodied or, full pulled together normal? Like what does that even mean to us, to people, to society? And what does it mean to you and to Nick and to your family? And like, how do you decipher that? Yeah.
So not in a naive way or in ignorance. Nick is just Nick. And then it kind of ends there. The handicapped, the disabled, that all those descriptions. I don't see it. I don't allow that in. I just don't. When I look at Nick, it's just Nick. He's the person. It's not the physical on the outside that is the person. And we really look at the person. I don't let, I'm really easygoing and just don't really let that affect me.
Because there's this global belief, like it's like if they're this, then they're that. Like if they don't have this, then we label them as this, and it's just like we try to put people into a box in some way and label that box as this is what it is, so therefore. And in one part of the book that really got me pissed, like I was so mad reading it, was the neighbor. Like you had Nick was playing, and one of the neighbors like said like, how dare you allow your son to play with my kid? Like we don't associate with handicapped kids or something, like some bogus stuff. Like what the hell was that about? Because
so what happened was when our community first met, like when our community first was aware of Nick, my son Mike went over to his friend's house after winning a baseball game. So we were at Mike's baseball game, and that's when a lot of our neighbors got to see Nick for the first time. Because I'm not the person that offers explanation. This is Nick. That's it. the woman was from a different culture, and she, in her culture, she believed I must have done a heinous crime, that God punished me by giving me Nick.
Mm.
And I was like, oh my God. I was angry. I was angry for me. I was angry because my son was not allowed to play with his friend because of this mom's culture and opinion. That's what angered me. And I told her, I feel so bad for you. I feel so bad for you that you don't know what it's like to have faith and be loved by a God that would never, ever punish someone in this way. So I pitied her, but I was angry more for my child than I was that she said that to me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I got mad on behalf of everyone else reading that. I was like,
Thank you.
but
Well,
beautiful response. Go ahead, Diggs.
And I think it's like, not only were you not punished, you were blessed, right? And that's the beautiful part of all of this is, Nick was an answer to prayer for you, and now he was a blessing to your family to start, and now he's blessing the world, right? And we're all blessed by
Thank you.
to know Nick. Walk me through this story, right? Because I almost couldn't believe it when I heard it about him cutting his arm off to start wrestling, right? And or at least to try to be better at wrestling and try to be competitive. Like, how did you go about that process of making that decision and trusting him to kind of make that choice, and making that choice with him? Because it seems like it's pretty extreme, right? So walk me through that.
Well, first of all, understand that raising Nick, I would walk in the door from work and would not be surprised of half the crazy things he's done or told me. So keep that in mind, that the unexpected was always expected. I walk in the door, I'm like, okay, what do you have for me? What happened and what did you do today? Just a little story. So going back in when Nick was younger, we took him to other children's hospitals for suggestions, okay? Because we would do anything and everything to make sure that he had a great life, okay? All the tools, anything you could think of, we were doing it. I'm so thankful that Michael and I are such in tune to each other and in agreement that we wouldn't allow them to physically alter his body until he was old enough to have an opinion. So that was something that we were set on early on. So he wanted to be a wrestler. And I was like, oh my God, Nick, I want to wrestle. Now, the bone was growing faster than the skin on his little right arm. And if he banged it, the bone would come through. I was more concerned not about the wrestling, because my older son wrestled. I knew what it was. I love to scream at matches. I'm all for that. I was worried about, causing more damage to his arm. And he sat there and he was like, okay, well, can we cut it off? I'm not surprised he asked to cut it off. I was just like, oh, you have to be careful with your words. It's amputate. Just, you're so aggressive. I was like, you know what? If this is really one, it was hurting him regardless. Okay. He always kept it tucked in, and it was painful to him. So, let's take the focus away from something painful for you, and then we'll focus on the other. So we made an appointment with the doctor, and we sat down for the discussion, but the ultimate decision was his. Okay. And were we scared and nervous? Absolutely. praying and hoping that, like, you know, this was a good decision and it wasn't going to come back to bite anybody in the ass.
Right.
Sorry.
That's great.
So
I love it.
he was certain that doing this was going to change his life for the better. And sure, living pain free, what that would be a gift in itself. So was I? I'm not surprised of what he does.
Yeah, that's I love that story. I mean, there's so many stories that you share in the book, and that he has shared with between the skateboarding and the wrestling, and it's like all these like unique things that you would think. And then the one story you had in the book about the kids playing outside, and then he got hurt or fell or something like that, and inside the story. I mean, there's to your point, there were so many different examples in between his book and your book of
Right.
Nick doing crazy things. But the one that was nuts was when he said he's going to cut off his arm, and we're like, what?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Before we go into like Nick a little bit later in life, and for you to kind of experience, some of these transformations, between the zombie stuff and going into, that chapter of life. I had one of the questions. This was the question that my wife asked. That I'm glad she asked me, because her and I have had conversations around this of people looking, like if we're out and about as a family, and the staring, right? So like James, my son, is on a ventilator. He has oxygen support, and it's not a forever thing. It's just where we're at right now. So sometimes like a little kid might come up and be like, what's wrong with him? Or, like a little kid, and the parent will come and be like, don't be rude. Don't do that. And
they'll grab them and drag them away.
Yeah, and my wife, she has her opinions on it, and I'm very interested on, like, from your lens, like if you had any tips for people who, parents who don't know what to say or how to approach, a situation where, if Nick is unique in his own way, right? And a kid is curious, or a parent is like, I don't want to say they're staring, but they're curious. Like, what is the best way for someone to approach their curiosity, or to invoke conversation, or induce some sort of reciprocation, where it's not awkwardly staring, and it's also not hushing the kid? Like, I don't know. Do you have some wisdom to impart on this, please?
Okay, for our situation, I made sure that when we were out and people were staring at him, that I looked at them, or Nick looked at them and said hi, because who wouldn't ever say hi back? And then kind of kept ourselves open, inviting them in if they wanted to ask questions. Kind of having that openness, like that welcoming, like, hi, inviting them in. If someone didn't want to, they would just
look away.
Right?
Oops, sorry, I got caught in staring.
Right? So if I'm sure it happened to you. It really depended on what kind of mood I was in that day. I'll be honest. Right? So if I'm having a great day and I'm open, it's like your body language will invite someone in. But I didn't have, every day wasn't a great day. And I wasn't nice some days, where it'd be like, really? And, I would turn my back, and that's like closing that opportunity. But I think if you are open, and we wanted, I'd rather little kids come up to Nick and ask him questions. And from a young age, because Nick noticed people staring at him, I would lean over and still be able to see that person and say, Nick, say hi. And he'd wave, hi, and little children would be curious, like, where's your arm, or where's your hand? And we just taught Nick to say, oh, I don't have that. I was born this way. So it's all in the preparation. But
what about for the other family? Like, instead of staring, what is more appropriate? What's considered appropriate is really my curiosity. It's like, is it appropriate? It's not appropriate to stare, but is it appropriate to, like,
Okay.
compliment, like come over and say,
Yes.
wow, he is so cute. Look at your cute
Beautiful,
little
right?
hat.
Oh, what a
What a
beautiful
beautiful
little boy.
kid.
What a beautiful
Is that,
smile. Yeah, I think if you want to approach someone and you're staring because there is a unique or different situation and you're curious, because who isn't? I would think that you would approach in in a compassionate way, like, oh, he's so beautiful. Oh, what a beautiful dress she has on. Lead with the compliment or something nice, and that person will open up to you. And then
yeah.
you're able to,
And you
you
could
know,
still get to stare. You get to stare, but you get a closer look, right? I'm
you
just
get a
kidding.
closer look. Yeah. And then what are you going to
Oh,
see? A beautiful soul, a beautiful child, a beautiful person. You need to look inside.
mm.
Okay.
And that's what my wife said, and that's why she wanted me to capture that from you too, because the two of you are aligned with that, and that's what she's taught me. Because I'm like, I don't care, let them stare, whatever. She's like, no, there's an appropriate way, and it's like, because I don't know what to do. If I see someone I'm curious, I'm like, huh, what is the best way for me to engage in conversation with them to like not only satisfy my curiosity, but also make them feel significant. Like, what's the appropriate way for me to be able to help validate someone, but also satisfy my curiosity? And that's where it's like giving that compliment. Wow, what a beautiful, wow, you're adorable, or like, something like that. So I was naive to that, and I figured maybe there's a listener who is naive to that too. Biggs, let me kick it to you. I know you're curious on the next chapter.
Yeah, of course. So, and first off, I just love, like, again, everything I'm picking up from you, Stacey, is just like, yeah, we just treated Nick like one of the other kids, and
Yeah.
we just throw him into the world, and it's like someone's looking, you say hi, right? And
Yeah.
like you socialized him, just like you would want to socialize every other child, and it's amazing how often people, kids these days don't know how to interact with adults, don't know how to, sit down at a restaurant and order politely and do whatever. They're on their iPads. They got their headphones on at the restaurant. I'm like, what are we teaching these kids? And you did the exact opposite. So, I'm curious, watching Nick get into the world and now watching some of his success. I'm really curious, and I know there's lots of chapters. We probably can't get into every single one, but I'm curious,
Okay.
like, what's it been like as a mother to watch him step into the world and to go from victim to victor, to become an author, to become a speaker, to become a personality that people know? What's it been like for you? I mean, obviously, I'm sure that you're extremely proud.
Absolutely.
And feel free to gush about him. But also, like, what's it been like to watch this? And I'm curious from your side.
Sure. So, since Nick was born, I mean, just newly born, and then we introduced him to our community through our mayor because we weren't going to hide Nick.
Mm-hmm.
He's been changing lives since he's born.
Mm-hmm.
To see him grow up and give his gift to the world is incredible, and I'm super proud of him. But the most important thing, like, he does all these great things, and you can ask him. I'll call him or I'll talk to him, and he'll say, yeah, Mom, I did a podcast. Oh, I did a speaking event here. And I'm proud. I'm proud of all my kids. But the most important thing, and I'll say to him, okay, great, but are you happy? Because my goal for all my children is do great things, do little things, but in all things, just be happy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I even still today I'll call him, like, he'll yeah, we just did this, and and he's traveled all the world and doing great, and I'm proud, very proud. His dad, his siblings, were all proud. But I still always say, that's great. Are you happy? Like, are you happy? Yeah, Mom.
Well, hey, Instagram makes everyone look happy, right? So,
Yeah.
and Kimmy is
Cammy. Yeah.
Cam. So, Cam, awesome, beautiful couple, and it seems like they're doing life at a very high level together. And
their energy is like off the charts. You can just look at a picture and feel like their connection and their love. Their energy is just out of this world.
it's so beautiful to watch, and the story is remarkable. From, like I said, the zombie vine, turning into humor and scaring people, to scaring the guy from The Walking Dead and then getting scooped up there, and then you fast forward and speaking on stage with Tony Robbins, to
Right.
to speaking in China for
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people, or whatever it was, and now just doing from the DJ music stuff to the muscle bodybuilding and seeing The Rock, and just like all the cool stuff. I saw recently some with the legs, the prosthetics for the legs, a
Right.
recent post, and also in his car. What a badass vehicle that he
I
just
know, isn't that a
got,
great car?
and like
I like that
custom
car.
stuff, like all these cool, like so many cool things in the outside world that he's experiencing because of how you were able to raise him, but with the belief systems on the inside world. And he is living a full life in his 20s, and it's really beautiful for all of us to watch from the sidelines. And I just wanted to thank you on behalf of everyone that Nick has impacted, because you've demonstrated so much courage. And I know I've said it before, but I loved your book.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I know you're on a mission right now, and I'd love to hear maybe a little bit about what's next for you, Stacey, because you've
Okay.
I wouldn't say, you check the box, your job is done, you raise 4 extraordinary kids, you get these grandkids, but like it seems like you're on this trajectory and this mission to help more families, and turn these quote unquote struggles, we could call them, and these setbacks or these inconveniences of your life, and being a model for others. Can you kind of speak to like maybe a little bit about what's next beyond the now for you, for your family, for what you see?
I'll speak for myself, because I definitely can't speak for my husband. We're different and we come together and we make wonderful things happen. So you would think that, having Nick and trials and tribulations with him, I honestly, I will tell you, I thought I was exempt from anything else traumatic happen in my life. And I think Nick had mentioned that we lost our older son 2 years ago. So here I think, we did great with Nick, and life is going to be smooth sailing for me. I get to reap and the rewards of the hard work and dedication, and then wham. I believe that maybe after trying to have society learn that just because you're different bodied, that you are to have value, and to be accepted as just a wonderful person. I think the road for me might be to help maybe other parents to overcome the loss and the grief of a child. Maybe you always, Nick is huge on saying things happen for you, not to you. So maybe this happened for me. Maybe this is another area where I can touch other people, maybe from the loss of a child.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to mention that. I wasn't
Okay.
sure if it was
It's okay.
appropriate for the combo. I know Nick, we spoke about it briefly in his conversation, just, the suicide rates we talked a little bit about in our combo. And I know it's traumatizing, at least it could be. And we send our condolences to you and your family. And it's really a challenging thing to experience. And I like I said, I didn't want this
It's
conversation.
okay.
I wasn't sure. So
Nope.
But I really appreciate you for bringing that up, because I know it was something that's fairly recent,
Yeah,
within the last probably within the
2
last year
years.
or so, 2 years. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to speak to as far as any, because it's unfortunately a lot of it's coming more common and more relevant, especially with social media and the trends of teenage suicide and young people taking their life because they feel like inadequate or failures or addictions. And there's so many studies that
Addiction.
are kind of
Yeah.
showing in that direction. I mean, from if you had anything just to speak on lessons that you've learned, or counsel
Okay.
you might be able to offer to anyone who might experience something like that.
Okay. I'll be honest, I'm still processing.
Sure.
I'm still processing. Again, I dig deep into my faith, right? Because that's really what works for me. That is just in my soul. That's just my foundation. So I'm still processing. That's why why I haven't written anything, but it's amazing that the people I come in contact lately have lost a child. And so we counsel each other a little, right? Because a parent to a parent, there's a certain understanding. And I guess it might not be appropriate, but my husband and I, we joke. We have to joke about things and find the humor. Okay. And we were discussing my son, and I had said, I was like, you know what? I understand that. But I think of when he sits down and he's having dinner in heaven at God's table, I'm like, he has the best seat. We don't have a good seat. He has the best seat. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope he uses his manners, and I hope he doesn't like throw a dinner roll across the table and embarrass me. But, like, oh my God, I hope he has good manners at, God's table, I guess finding the humor in the tragedy to be able to cope and accept, what was happened. So I think that's where I would like to go next.
It's beautiful. It's great advice, and it's it's something where there's no one way to solve for something like that, right? There's no way to grieve. There's no way to overcome, but just trying to reach acceptance at some level. We always ask our guests, Stacey, a handful of questions towards the end.
Sure.
Just 3 rapid fire questions. The first question is, what do you think the world needs most right now?
Compassion, love. Well, love and compassion. We need to really strip all the things that just really aren't important and go back to basic. Just, just basic human decency would be a really good place to start.
Let's do it. Let's start here on the Better Than Rich show. We also ask, like, what books do you recommend people read and check out?
My book.
Which is again, what's it called?
Born to Break the Boundaries: How We Raise an Able Child in a Handicapped World.
And
I could give I give the personal testimony. It's a very quick read. I was able to knock it out in probably 2.5 hours. I was able to just devour it in total, and it is just it kept me. I cried and laughed. It just helped me, especially if you're a parent. Highly recommend the book as a personal testimony for sure. So if there was another book that they should check out besides yours, besides Nick's as well, I'm sure that's another book that you would recommend. well, what's a resource, even if it's just a resource that you think can be helpful for others on their journey?
Maybe not a book per se, but I really love the daily inspiration. You can have a book or a journal or the little thing that you flip the calendar. I think that's great because you need to handle one day at a time. Because like yesterday had its issues, tomorrow has its own. So if you could focus on today, I like daily reminders and inspirational things to read.
That's great. And our third question and final question for you, Stacey, is what does it mean to be better than rich?
What does it mean to be better than rich? Okay. Well, we know money can't buy you love. Money can't change your feelings about yourself or others, right? Because you can't buy affection. I think just being surrounded by a loving family, and most importantly, loving yourself is greater than anything that riches could buy. You need to be rich in love for yourself, rich in God's love. There's anything like that.
Thank you. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us, to share these stories, these vulnerably and courageously. And if somebody wanted to pick up the book, if somebody wanted to support you and your cause and your mission, where might they be able to go?
Amazon. My book is on Amazon.
That's great. And then just search Stacey Santonastasso.
Yeah, you can put Stacey Santonastasso. Yeah. You can even put Nick, and he was kind enough to bundle my book with his. I was like, oh wow, that was great. But yeah, just our name or Born to Break the Boundaries.
Great. Awesome. And by the way, how was it growing into that last name? By the way, my wife had to take on an Abramowitz last name. I'm just curious. What was your last name before Santonastasso?
Okay, so it's Portuguese, so it was Fernandes.
Oh.
I had to, I'm a weird combo. I had to sing it, learn it. And that's how I did. I would sing it, so I knew it. And that's how I taught my kids. I made it into a song, and no, I'm not singing it for you. But
I was just about to ask.
No.
Like, all right, Santonastasso.
Nick is the singer.
That's funny.
But I would sing a song.
That's
and
great.
Then, and that's how they learned it.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. Andrew, thank you for your time. Stacey, thank you for yours.
Thank
and listener,
you.
Thank you so much for yours. And again, listener, assuming this episode helped you, it's your turn to help others by sharing it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. And as always, remember, leave today better than you found it. Until next time, take care.
What's up, guys? Biggs here. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you did, go ahead and check out the other video that's being recommended on the screen right now. You can also subscribe to our channel. And then if you really are interested in what we do, go to automatedelegatesystemize.com to learn more about what we're up to. Thanks again.